They're like, yeah, we need to go retail, but all of our bids keep getting denied. If you're mentioning bids, you're doing it wrong.
I think a lot of people in our industry think that they're the only people who work. Like, nobody wants to work anymore.
You want to push them out of their comfort zone without pushing them so far out that they just give up.
You need a proof of concept.
I can sell, so I'm the proof of concept. I don't think it's that hard.
Don't file bankruptcy yet. The people who have bad insurance, what's not, or ACV policy, they still need a roof.
Don't give them the tools to be successful at it. It's different with each client.
Chris, first of all, thank you so much for flying in all the way from Dallas. How was the workout this morning?
It was awesome, man. It was really good.
What was your favorite part?
Maybe the was it the farmer walk? Is that what you call it? Yeah, I like that.
Going
That's
up
good.
and down.
Yeah, just because it forced. I've been shifting in my workouts to try and focus more on my core and stabilizer muscles, and so I've been working on smaller and slower movements through things like Pilates. And so, while that farmer walk isn't like that, there's not a lot of movement. It's more of just maintaining strength. So I really actually like that because it allowed me to.
Your midline is so important. So many people never train their midline. And if you want abs, if you like, a lot of people will tell you this, like abs are in the kitchen, but it's also being under pressure. It's not your crunches. You have to, and you know what's funny, like for years we've done fittest roofer contest, holding the bundle of shingle above. And I've seen so many big guys coming in and it's like, oh, I'm gonna crush like. So actually in Dallas next week, we're giving away $500 for anybody who will break 3 minutes. So 3 minutes, hold 70 pounds. So 70 pounds for 3 minutes, not a lot. I can do 4 or 5 minutes.
Really?
But even big guys, they will go for like a minute, and in the second minute, like minute 10, minute 20, they start shaking. Because if you don't have a core, all the stability muscles, and which is what we do today, farmer's work will do it for you, right? And the best one is you take one above your head and one lower, and then you switch. Because your body is like, you're like a crane, right? So the midline, I mean, I love it. It's actually one of the favorite things to do.
I dislocated this elbow when I was 21, and you know, because it created that imbalance. Oh, this was here. This was hinged upside down like that underneath someone's leg. I looked at the top of my hand and was like, oh, that's not where that's supposed to be.
What happened?
I was an idiot. It was my best friend's 21st birthday. We were drunk wrestling, and you know.
Oh, that was from wrestling?
Yeah, we just spun each other around and both landed on the ground and looked, and this one was here, and I mean, it was just dangling. I put it back in myself. 3 days later, I was 20 at the time, and I was just stupid. So I'm like, oh, surely it's healed. So I took off the temporary cast to take a nap, and it just fell right out of the socket again. I had to put it back. And
do you know why they have that pin on the arm wrestling table?
Leverage? No.
They're wrong. Do you guys know why they have? So it's a safety. So people think that arm wrestling is like you pull in here. It's nothing to do with leverage. It's actually. So think about this. When you arm wrestle, right? So it takes 15 pounds of torque to fracture this bone right here. So like do this and just go back, right?
Yeah.
Like it doesn't take a lot.
No.
So 15 pounds of torque and you're gonna like completely break it. Now, when you're in arm wrestling position, if your body is parallel to the table, which is this pin does, so, and that's what judges look, right? So if you lose the fight, it's a bicep curl. There's no, so arm wrestling is not dangerous at all if you do it right. But what guys do, they twist their body because of their ego. I don't want to lose the fight, right? So you going all in, and now you're in this position. So if your shoulder going, opposite direction of the table, so you're not parallel anymore. So here's twisting. It's all angle game. And now you're here. And now
you're exposed.
Now you're gonna either fracture muscle or bone, one of the two.
I've seen that happen in arm wrestling.
It's horrible, but the only reason it happens is when you start when your ego does not want to lose the fight, and you're going all like you pretty much cannot walk away. So at competitions, they don't let you. So they look here and they look at your position, like otherwise you're gonna hurt yourself. Yeah,
mechanics.
All mechanics.
So yeah, that's been a huge thing for me. So I really appreciate it. Plus the cardio, I've not been doing a lot lately.
You did great. I've seen 1,600 watts on that at your peak.
Yeah.
And I wonder if you redo it, you probably can beat me because you were.
I slipped a lot.
Yeah, you slipped.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk
Okay,
about your
roof.
business. So you've built and sold a roofing company. If you would start today, if you would start it today over, what would you do
If
different?
I start today, or start today when I
Start
started?
today.
Okay, today. Well, I mean, we're doing that right now with a lot of our clients, actually. I mean, obviously, I'm biased, but my big thing is pivoting to incorporate a retail model. I think that's really necessary from a almost even from an ethical standpoint to be prepared for that. I'm in Dallas, right? And I grew up in the storm shade. My first season, I got dropped in a neighborhood that had 40, 50 different roofing signs in it when I got there, you know? And there's a model in these very heavy storm markets, at least in Dallas and a lot of them, it relies on the insurance money. And things are changing with the insurance companies and with inflation and with the economy and all of these things. And so there's a lot of people that are, I'll tell you, let me put it this way. So I had a client in Dallas who I had a lead source for. I was like, hey, I'm always wary about giving people lead sources in Dallas, right? I said, let me just give you this. And so they tried it out. And after they went through this trial phase with it, they said, look, we got a lot of appointments out of it. It was good, but most of them had like ACV policies. There was people who couldn't go through the insurance, and they just dropped them. They're just like, we can't help you. And that's my concern for a lot of the industry, is that we don't have solutions for homeowners who don't have the insurance policy in some of these areas. There's a lot of people that just let the customers drop, and I don't think that's a
But
good
it's so
situation.
like, I mean, need is a need. Like people need, like look at asphalt shingle market. It average life expectancy is 18, 15 years, right? So it means that every asphalt shingle roof today in the next 20 years will need to be replaced. That's millions and millions of roofs. So that's your job security. The people who have bad insurance, what's not, or ACV policy, they still need a roof.
They do.
Why walk away? Why not on, like, first of all,
they don't know. They don't know.
what do they not know? Do they not know how to repair, how to sell, how to find, like, what they, all of it?
So most of like my clients or people, even friends, whatever, just in those markets, first of all, they don't know. Okay, it's shifted in the last year or two. More when I talk to people, a lot more have financing options. 2 years ago, no one even had financing options in our area.
Are they good finance options today or questionable or?
I think I'm not an expert in that space. What I'll say is that I think that it's interesting if you look at financing in other industries compared to roofing, and it's really interesting the way they have the models set up. And I don't really know a lot about this, but if you look at, like, say, cars, for instance, they have a finance department, they have points, and then you can add to it. So those guys can actually make money off of it. But for the roofing industry, it's completely the opposite. We get charged to sell financing. And so I don't know that I would say there's good options, but I don't know. I'm not a finance guy, so there are sufficient options to get it done for people that need help with that.
How
for
many
sure.
contractors in Dallas do repairs?
Well, I don't know, but it's not all. It's a smaller percentage than it should be. And so yes, that's one of the problems.
If you have to guess, 20, 30% do repairs?
Less
or
than that.
less
From a number standpoint, now if you get some of the bigger shops, yes, but like the small guys, because most of the companies in DFW, say we have 20,000. Who knows how many roofers there are in Dallas, but most of them are. It's the guys. It's like your situation and my situation. When I had my company, I had about 5 guys that have split off and started their own companies, and they all do $2 to $10 million, right? And so those guys, I think, they're used to a certain model. They don't understand. They've never been trained on repairs. Now, our guys were, but most of these guys, they never get trained on repairs, which is a very different business model from going and replacing insurance-related roofs. They don't understand maintenance plans. They don't understand financing. They don't understand value selling. That's the big one. So from a sales perspective, the big difference is that this is the first thing I get when I try and talk to roofers about. They're like, yeah, we need to go retail, but all of our bids keep getting denied. I'm like, if you're mentioning bids, you're doing it wrong, because bidding is a price-focused activity, but you need to be presenting a value to them in order to get them, because ultimately what you're saying to them is, hey, I know you're, like my first roof, I got, I was not a roofer at the time, but I got $1,000 cash in my pocket from a roofer and an upgraded shingle. I didn't even know I was doing anything wrong at the time. I was just a homeowner, and someone came by and is like, hey, I'll give you $1,000 to replace your roof. And I'm like, okay, that's how Dallas worked for so long. And now it's a little different. And so I think people are starting to understand that, but there's a learning curve that comes with it. I saw this coming like 7 years ago. So I spent a lot of time in research and development trying to figure out. I always look at the future as waves, and I say this a lot, but it's like waves are coming, and either they're going to crush you or carry you to the shores of wealth and prosperity. And I'm like, the wave that's coming is these insurance policy changes and the shift towards retail. So I wanted to get ahead of that. So I spent a lot of time and money researching how the companies that were doing that nationwide were able to do so successfully in storm markets. But there's and I'll go even a step further, and I'm very integrated in the way I look at these things. It's not just about the sales pitch itself, it's about the setup. It's how are you presenting it in your initial offer? How are you facilitating the sale? One of the things that, we were talking about today is you've got sales reps who are responsible for everything from canvassing to selling to meeting with adjusters, maybe doing material orders, collections, all of these things. And that is not really the ideal setup for a retail model. You really need to actually change things throughout the entire pipeline. And all of those things will make your business not only more retail friendly, but also more scalable and safe, which I could go into, but that's another issue.
So Dallas as a market, do you see consumer behavior changing? Like, when I understand the roofing is how roofers do business changing, but we also have a customer who used to wait for the next store, waiting for those 20 roofers knock at the doors. And I've noticed that a lot of people, the reason roofers cannot charge deductible is because if you did not pay deductible in the last 3 roofs,
it's a hard pill to swallow.
Exactly.
So I think, there's a shift. Now, caveat, I'm not personally in the field selling right now, so I can't. But from what my clients and sales guys and stuff tell me, yes, there have been shifts. I've heard it's getting more difficult, particularly in DFW. But also I think that difficulty is based on the old model, and the new model is more, I believe, more effective. So like when I say to pitch retail, I'm not saying tell them don't touch the insurance. I do more of a dual funding where we talk about getting them proper financing regardless of the insurance company. You can actually stack them. They can have a choice between them depending on their policy. So I don't if you look at a lot of the retail companies, they kind of pigeonhole you into insurance bad, retail good. I don't look at it that way. I just look at it as I want to make sure my homeowners have the right type of financing to cover their costs and make sure they're making a good decision. So for me, I look at total cost of ownership, total value of ownership. And I try and with clients, and I try to instill this in my clients and in my sales reps or anything like that for their clients. But I want to make sure that I'm almost operating as like a financial advisor to them on this. I'm the roofing expert. I understand the industry. I understand the policies to a degree. Now, I can't interpret them or anything like that as a roofer, but I understand what's going on. And so I feel like I have a responsibility to educate homeowners on these things and let them understand, okay, so let's look at some options for you. We can go and this is, here's a little bit of a retail version of a pitch. We got 2 options, okay? This is the traditional model, which everybody in the industry is pretty familiar with. We go out, we meet with the insurance company. If they approve it, we do the work for whatever the insurance says, plus your deductible, or which would technically be considered in that same lump sum. And you're going to be out of pocket your deductible. Now you might be out of pocket your deductible and an ACV portion or something like that. I'm sorry, or I guess the difference there, the depreciation. You might be out of pocket the depreciation. And so that puts you in, now you're out, okay, so it's $25,000 roof, maybe you're out of pocket's $10,000, okay? Most homeowners can't afford $10,000 out of pocket right now. And even the guys that are coming in and still eating 1% deductible, of which there are plenty, I'm sure, in DFW, even those guys are gonna have to collect something from the homeowner. Maybe it's $5,000 instead of $10,000, but they gotta collect something now because these policies are getting so expensive on the homeowner that you can't, even if you're willing to eat a deductible, you can't afford to eat the whole thing in the ACV. So what then happens is homeowners have this position, said, okay, I don't know your financial situation, but this is option 1. It'll cost you roughly $10,000, and we're gonna put a $20,000, $25,000 roof on your house. That's it's a good value, right? Or we can finance the entire roof. We don't have to put back the exact same thing, the insurance, we don't have to go back with the same stuff. We can put on whatever you want. You want to go with stone-coated steel, you want to go with a shingle, you want to go with a class 4, you want to go with a Euro shield, whatever. We can do anything we want at this point. We're not subjected to what you had and what you, and we can put you, and this is a cash flow play for some people. We can put you on small monthly payments, and then whatever the insurance company does end up paying, you can actually keep that. So it actually helps them with cash flow at that point. And because we're putting a more expensive product on, there's no insurance fraud. We're not sending the insurance a lower invoice than what we're charging the homeowners. If anything, it's higher. So we make more money at the end of the day. We usually sell a better product. It's one that's going to last them a lot longer. It's one that they can be proud of, one that's going to help with their property value. And then also, it can, for homeowners who need it, it can help their cash flow temporarily as well, which we did this a lot during COVID because there were so many people who had a hard time with that.
In Asana, you mentioned that you spent 3 years in the R&D.
Yeah.
What were you building?
I mean, I'm just a nerd. So it's for me, like, I like watching numbers and I wanted to scale the company and everything, but I wanted to make sure I had the right foundation first. And frankly, it's probably one of my biggest weaknesses. I over-engineer things and I love to play with systems and stuff like that. So for me, it was heavily based, and there was a lot of circumstances that led to this. But it was really heavily just understanding mostly the maintenance, understanding repairs, understanding a retail model, and then how to apply that in a storm market. But then also, I mean, everything like the CRMs, and that was another thing that was much more difficult at the time was our technology 3 years ago. I mean, for instance, I wanted to run Sales Rabbit and Job Nimbus together. And I had like Sales Rabbit, Job Nimbus, and GHL running behind them for communication. So I had like this crazy system that took forever to build. And now, most of that can be taken out of the box a lot easier. So it was a lot on tech, a little bit on like personnel and models, and then a lot on the retail stuff.
So today you're developing a plug-and-play franchise model. What's the biggest challenges?
Well, on my end, there's obviously just the normal business ownership difficulties, but with roofers, I think it's a mentality shift and a process shift. And I'm still it's different with each client, but you have some who are more and less resistant to change. You have some who are more and less resistant to technology and more and less resistant to passing things off. So one of the conversations we were having is there's this process of, even the ones who recognize that they want something more robust, the guys who've been doing this a long time, they're so committed to their process that shifting little pieces can be painful for them. And so I think it's actually the hardest part is more of a human issue. And it's helping people be comfortable with that transition in a way that they're able to do so. You want to push them out of their comfort zone without pushing them so far out that they just give up. And that's kind of that's like the little nuanced challenge there, I think, is helping people transition at their own pace. And it's difficult for someone like me who's like, no, let's go, I want this done in a month. And so that's for me, that's probably the biggest challenge.
How do you build systems that are repeatable across multiple CRMs? I notice like people hate CRMs more than anything. Like I see traffic from one CRM to another. Like they'll find one function.
Like the top Facebook group comment is
yeah, like this does not do for me. They go here, and then that'll be. It's almost like, how they say, like in marriage, like you find like if you don't like your partner, like 10%, right? So you like 90% of your partner, but 10% you don't like. So you're getting divorced. Yeah, you go for something else, but then you will never have 100% of one person. There's always going to be something, right? Yeah. But people make these changes and they usually regret it.
Yeah, I deal with that a lot. I mean, I have customers who come to me and they're like, oh yeah, we've been through 3 CRMs this year. That's your first problem. Like, that's exhausting for me.
So is the person who went through 3 CRMs in 1 year, like if you would be a therapist, what would be diagnosis? Like, all right, let's stop. Because is it a lack of research?
Yeah, so I think it's hard, right? Especially for roofers. Roofers are so you got to think about where they come from. Most of the time they're sales guys. They haven't been through any kind of formal business training, tech training, any of that stuff. No one ever this is a whole other thing. No one ever teaches us about taxes, mortgages, insurance, no one teaches us any of that
Actual
stuff.
real part of the business.
Yeah, like no one teaches us how to be adults, frankly. Like they teach us all the stuff we, don't really use much, and we are running around like chickens with our heads cut off trying to figure out, how we file our taxes properly, and the accountants can't even agree on it. And it's like, okay, so that's, you're set up for failure there. But then when it comes to the systems, I think roofers specifically, in addition to not having that foundational education and experience, they're also stuck in the truck a lot of the time. Especially most of the clients, I'm trying to help pull people out of the $2 to $10 million range and get them above that, kind of break through that. I have some clients that started above that, but also I'm trying to like help these guys that are get stuck in that little mode, and they're in the truck. So let me put it this way: for me, shopping CRMs is incredibly challenging. We were talking about this with Kevin, right? It's like he has a, they got 90% of the way through a CRM. They found there was one thing that was just a complete deal breaker for them because of the way it connected with financing. And so I think the first question is they have no idea what questions to ask to begin with. When I go to a conference, like we'll go to the expo next week at Win the Storm, the conversation that I have with the CRM guy and the conversation that the roofing company owner has with the CRM guy are completely different. They're asking them very basic questions that every CRM is going to be able to say yes to. That has nothing to do with whether or not it's going to actually work for their model. So there's to go back to your original question. What I'm working on right now is I have my process that I follow. I have a process document and a workflow, and I have every board and every stage and everything like this, all the automations, all of it's documented. And I have different models I can use with clients where I can just hand them the blueprints and be like, go and figure out how to put this in your own CRM. Most of the time, even the tech qualified ones have a hard time with some of the CRMs because of the complexities of the way they build out. But I'm working on trying to have actually build them all out myself for all of the major CRMs so I can facilitate any client that much quicker instead of just having them do it. I want to be able to do it for them. But there's so many little things with the technology anymore that it's very, very hard. And then there's a bit of a value concern for me, I think. So 5 years ago, a $5,000 website was pretty normative. If I told you today I was going to charge you $5,000 to build your CRM, a lot of people are like, what? Like, I already have to pay for the monthly subscription. I have to pay for someone to build it out for me. It's like, yeah, but that's the backbone of your entire business. $5,000, I mean, you're effectively building out the business at that point, and $5,000 to do that is dirt cheap. So I think but that's getting better, and it's more of a understanding the scope and really getting their mind wrapped around what the technology is capable of. And I think a lot of the times they'll see like the guys that don't use that and are successful, and they're like, so you don't need that. And you're right, you don't. There are guys that have done, $100 million on paper, I think. I don't know. But, just because you can doesn't mean it's the better way to do it or the more sustainable. And so helping people see the value of like, hey, if you have the culture and you have the systems, now you can really crank.
What's one area contractors think they need help with, but they really don't?
One area that contractors think they need help with, but they don't. I would say it's more of a mentality shift. I think they think they have problems with their sales reps, but I think it's more of, it's not the people that are the problem, it's the setup that's the problem. So they're right about the fact that there's a problem, but they're wrong about what the problem is. Mm-hmm. They think they don't have good quality people, but what they don't have is the right setup to make them successful.
Environment. I agree. Well said. Because if you put the right people in the wrong environment, they're not going to produce.
Extreme ownership's a really good example. I think in one of the chapters they talk about that. They're like they had different teams, and one team was just getting absolutely murdered, and then one team was absolutely crushing it. And the guys that were getting murdered are like, they have the best team and all this stuff. And then they switched the teams with the leaders. Guess what happened? The one that had the bad guys they started to suck. The guys that had the good ones and got the bad guys, they crushed it. It's because of the leadership, not because of the reps.
And sometimes that common denominator. So if you switched 3 CRMs in 1 year, what's common denominator? Is the guy in the mirror. You're the one. It's almost like, the person who've been married 5 times and keep blaming their exes, right? But you've been married 5 times. In like 3 years.
There's a trajectory here. Yeah,
Exactly.
that's exactly right. Yeah, and so you just it's insane. It's the old colloquial insanity definition of do the same thing over and over again, expecting different results.
I think a lot of people in our industry think that they're the only people who work. Like nobody wants to work anymore. And it's typical entrepreneurs. Like if you're an entrepreneur, if you're a business owner, you should outwork every single employee. Like people not supposed to, I mean, we want them to give 100%,
Right.
but you work 100% when you're motivated, driven, when you work for yourself. It's very hard from employee to get, 100% capacity. He's employee. It's
Right.
kind of like easy pass.
Right.
But you expect him like, if I can do it, why you can do it? Well, you can do it, but it's also your business.
Right.
You also have an exit. You're probably thinking right now about selling to PE in 5 years, and this person probably thinking about starting their own company. Like you can, but if you can get 10 people going from 10%, 70% to 80%, that's another person. Like you just replace yourself, right? Just your job is get the most out of them, but you cannot expect people to do what you do and how you do it.
Which is another mistake I think a lot of roofing company owners make with their sales guys. I get this a lot too, is we just need more sales reps because they see the model where they see the 100 guys that are out there selling $100 million and they're like, we need 100 guys to do that. It's like, well, maybe, but you need one first. You need to show that you can create one leader first.
You need a proof of concept.
You do. And most of them are like, I can sell, so I'm the proof of concept. But yeah, you haven't passed the baton. You haven't replaced yourself yet. And the mistake I think a lot of people make, and I've made this before too, is they'll hire 5 or 6 guys at the start, and they're the only one that knows how to do anything. And then they have to train 5 or 6 guys that don't know anything all at the same time. And they spread too thin, and all of them fail. So that's where it's like, yeah, you put it, so there's a culture side and there's a system side and an incentive side. What are you doing to make this worth their while? Because you want to give them a good life, right? And that's a big thing for me is I want to educate them on how that's more of a passion, but I hate the fact that people don't understand. You know how many people don't know how to do a budget for their personal lives in this country? It's ridiculous.
That's majority.
And
is it because nobody's teaching them, or is it because of the culture, because of instant gratification?
Both.
Here and now?
It's terrible. I mean, I was a high school dropout, or kicked out or whatever. I was a mess. I got kicked out of multiple schools, and my thing, I was 16 years old, and I started having entrepreneurial aspirations very young, but I remember at 13 I was actually like fantasizing about being a successful businessman, and I think I was starting to shift out of the idea of becoming a professional basketball player and understanding I want to make money. At 13, I think biologically, historically, you had kings at 13, and then you go through puberty. Everything. I started to think like a man a little bit in some ways, and I'm like, I want to go make some money. I'm tired of this school stuff. Like, let's go. And like Ron Swanson says in Parks and Rec, child labor laws are ruining this country. It's a joke, but at the same time, we are kind of delaying. There's this failure to launch, and by the time you're 18 years old, which is the first time you can get a decent job in this country, you're an adult. So I got. They don't teach that. So I dropped out of high school without ever being taught how to budget, without ever being taught, and you can get a GED without that stuff too. Budgeting, insurance, any of the basics for life. No one teaches that. Families aren't really teaching it anymore. I used to teach on culture. There's a really interesting study from UCLA Film School where they tracked from 1967, every 10 years, from 67 till 2017 now. When I first did this, it was before 2017, so I only had 2007 data. But now they have 2017, and they show that it's what are the top 18 values being portrayed by media to children under the age of 10. And in 1967, it was like community, benevolence, hard work ethic, things like that. By the time we hit, I think it was 97 or 2007, it flipped. And number one was fame, self-gratification, personal image. And it all became very self-centered. And so I think there's that becomes the fuel to destroy a generation. Because, and again, I think in like movie quotes and stuff, there's another one from Devil's Advocate where Al Pacino talks about how all you have to do is give them these dollar-rich dreams and then just set them loose to go run after it, and then don't give them the tools to be successful at it. And I think that's what we have in this generation. I used to go and teach kids in high school how to budget, and I'm like, look, I know you want those Jordans, but you're on a $35,000 salary after you graduate, tops, Let me show you how much you can't afford. And so I think there's this like, we want more, we need more, we feel like we have to impress people, the flex culture, all that stuff. But then there's also no one ever taught me how to actually manage these things properly. And so it's chaos.
I also think that social media is it's like gas on a fire, because you see what other people have. And I don't know where it's coming from. Even old people have it now. I have my dad recently, buys like a super expensive car, and I'm like, Dad, you can't afford it. I'm sorry, like I love you, but like you can't afford, like math is not mathing here. And he goes like, I want it and I don't want to hear about it, right? And I get it, like I've been there myself. But I think a lot of business owners and a lot of young people, they think that they work hard and they deserve it. But I deserve it. I work so hard. Well, if you work hard, people don't get that the only criteria you can judge how hard you work is how much money you made. So if you work hard but you don't make money, you don't work hard enough.
Productive.
Exactly. So like there are a lot of people that work hard, but you can't just go buy a jet, right? But now, and another problem is there's like in a capitalist country like United States, you have so many people who know that psychology, who will take advantage of you. I mean, you'll go to like, Amazon. I mean, we are financing not only phones now. We're financing like $100. Like sometimes I go on like the shop app. I go on a shop app, buy like T-shirt and it gives me finance options. Would you like to finance like $70 shirt? I'm like, who? Like I'm not gonna finance it, but I'm curious who is financing it.
It's sad and it's scary. So I actually mini predicted the '08 crash in my freshman economics class in college, because I was like, they showed us the GDP go like this. And I was like, I wonder, just intuitively, I wonder what the per capita debt graph looks huge. Like. It did this.
Yeah.
It was like they were staggered by a couple of years, but they'd made the same curve. I was like, oh, that's not sustainable.
Yes,
it was like, so it's all fake money. The GDP is all fake. It's all.
Are you a big Dave Ramsey fan?
I respect what he does for people who need his services. I'm not against credit. I'm not against leverage.
In business, you have to
if you do it wisely, it's good.
What he's teaching, people need to hear it. So we have like Grant Cardone's here, and we have Dave Ramsey here, right? And I don't think that you have to fight. I think Dave Ramsey is radical and no that at all, and which is I respect that, because there's so many
for a lot of people,
and it's good for a lot of businesses too. Yeah. There's so many, because you take risk, like that is risk, and even like Grant Cardone recently, like, oh, I'm selling my jet, and because I have to, right? Like you risk it all, you can lose it all. Yeah. Why?
Well, that's the thing.
But you take your risk.
I mean, like I'm pretty risk averse. Like I'm trying to think if I've ever had a company that leveraged debt. I don't think so. I guess our roofing company, we had a line of credit that we used for a while at the beginning. But even that, it was like we didn't get a loan, we got a line of credit so that we used it as needed. And it was mostly to cover like larger job costs.
No, that is good. It can be very good. It's a great tool, but you have to have a track record that you can manage it and pay it off. And when you're 90-year-old and you're buying, I don't know, $120,000 car and you have $30,000 income, I have questions.
Well, and that's the concern I think that I have for this generation and beyond, is like there's no. And that's one of the things that I think is important to instill in your team. That's kind of where I think this originally started, as I mentioned that, is I'll tell you, when I had my retail store, I used to be a GM of a clothing store, and my back hurt because I have like herniated disc and stuff, so I have to stand on my feet 60 hours a week. And what I'd do is I'd go in the back and I'd just sit down with my team. I'd be like, just talk to me for a minute. Tell me what's going on in your life. And I'd listen to them like, oh, I'm having problems with my boyfriend, my girlfriend. I'm having problems with whatever. I'm drinking too much, whatever, you know? And I was just the ear for them. I'm like, well, let's talk through that. And what I realized was the more healthy I could help them be as individuals, the healthier my business got. And I took over that location. They were going down 25% annually. And we were down an additional 25% for the 6 months. And I had this like mentality shift where I said, I'm just going to make sure, first of all, I'm going to hire people that I believe are of good character instead of just good salespeople. And then I'm going to focus very heavily on making sure that they're healthy as individuals. And we were we grew I don't know what percentage, about 10% in December alone, and then it just skyrocketed, and we took that store to the highest it's ever been after that. And I think a lot of it just comes down to making sure your people are taken care of the right way.
I agree. Let's talk about our industry.
Yeah.
Long term, what's the best business model do you see for the industry today?
Residential or commercial?
Residential.
I like this dual funding. Obviously, I'm biased. It's what I push, but I think dual. I mean, depends on what you mean by a model.
Describe it.
So we take people through, I do 4 pillars: qualified demos, fully funded sales, production and collections, and general administration. Those are the 4 areas I focus on. So the way I look at it is, if you have a steady flow of qualified demos coming in, not just leads, but you actually get them to demo. So we have like subsets within that where we have lead portfolios, then you have like a scheduling campaign and a nurturing campaign. I want my sales guys showing up to an appointment to both homeowners ready to make a decision, who are already knowledgeable about the product if possible, so that they become more of like, help them select things than having to hard sell them. But that's the qualified demos. You get that. Once you have that, now you need to be able to sell. So you have your pitch and you have your funding. And I think this is where there's a bit of a pivot, is I want to have the option to facilitate insurance claims and retail claims, whatever market I'm in. So if I'm in a retail heavy market and we get a storm, I want to be prepared. What's my solution if we get a storm? If I'm in a storm market and we don't get storms, what's my solution then? If we're in a storm market and we do get storms, what's my solution then? So I always look at it as, I want to be able to facilitate 100% of my customers that come through my door, that I come to their door or whatever. And so that's where that really kicks in. And then the last part is the production and collections automation. I think just making sure that those things can be so heavily automated now. You know, you don't need sales reps going and picking up checks. It's a bad dream to me. You know, I have a guy who's in Virginia Beach who sells 66% retail one call close. 2 out of every 3 people he gets in front of, he closes, and they have low margin, or not low margins.
Overhead?
No, I don't know, because he's connected to a solar company. I don't know what their overhead is, but they have low average sales comparatively to like Dallas. I think they're probably $12,000-$15,000 average sale. But this guy, I did the math with him. I was like, okay, so last month you signed 20 deals out of 28, you know, something like that. And your average sale is this much, and how many hours a week you spend? We guesstimated he's making the company about $7,000 in revenue per hour he's in front of a customer. And I'm like, why do roofers have guys like this collecting checks? One, he doesn't know how to do it. He doesn't probably understand the back end invoicing, particularly if it is insurance related. And second of all, like, God, I want him in front of customers, not collecting checks. You know, I don't want him adjusting insurance claims. I don't want him doing any or meeting with adjusters. I mean, I don't
Get the
want
most out of his time.
I want him to sell. Yeah, I don't even want him canvassing. I want him selling. And then, so that's a big pivot too, I think, is really allowing, okay, that's maybe a good way to put this. Outside of the retail conversation, I think the pivot from having project, not to say we can't still have that, there's a place for that, but having the project managers who take the job from canvas to collection, I think shifting away from that model to a model that's more automated and then allows the sales reps to be sales reps, I think that is the future.
I think that's a good example of 80-20 rule, right? Like, for him, probably 80% of his outcome comes from 20% of his effort, like in sales. So if you give him more activities, 100%. Agree. What's your advice to roofers who want to attract private equity?
God, they're hungry right now. I don't think it's that hard. I don't think it's hard to attract them.
Be alive, have a pulse.
I think, yeah, right. Have roofing in your company name.
Don't file bankruptcy yet.
Yeah. No, I mean, pretty much. They're very, very hungry for these
They
businesses
have
right
Facebook
now.
page.
Yeah.
Let them talk
Sold.
to
4x EBITDA. No, I think to me, it's less about attracting them and more about attracting the right ones and the right valuations and things like that. And I'm not, that's not really my area. I'm trying to get into more of the roll-up side of things. I've been through it a couple of times, but I'm trying to, I am wanting to understand that better as far as what they are specifically wanting to do. But I'll say this. There's a few things I've noticed in my conversations with PE guys. So first of all, foundationally, what they care about is EBITDA. Honestly, that's what they really care about, because they can take your crappy systems and throw it into a better system and then multiply your EBITDA. So they don't necessarily care about that, but they're also not going to give you any kind of and it depends on the company. But by and large, EBITDA is the most important thing, and revenue is big too. But then beyond that, having systems and controlling your pipeline, I think that's probably what will become the biggest thing. And then the last one would be any kind of niche you've got. Like if you have recurring revenue or relationships with someone that's going to be something that guarantees some stability, that would be good. Any kind of an angle you have that says, hey, we do things a little bit differently that could help your other branches. Because that's what they're looking for, I think, a lot of the time is how can we, either we're taking you for your EBITDA or we're taking you for something else you have plus your EBITDA. And so make sure your EBITDA is good, make sure your books are good, clean. That'll make things a lot easier. And then if you have something that makes you special, that's kind of icing on the cake. And to me, that's where some of this retail stuff comes in, because I've worked with a few PE firms. I worked with the one that bought us. I've worked with some of the bigger ones. I've had conversations with some of the big guys and stuff. And there's some things that they don't understand. So private equity, if you look in the home services space, is used to HVAC, electric, plumbing, the guys that run home service companies. Roofing companies are not really that in a storm market. They don't operate like home service companies. They operate like solar companies or direct sales stuff. It's a very different model. It's a lot of door to door. It's a lot of, and so they don't understand. So they come in and they're like, well, we want to W-2 everybody. Okay, well, that creates some complexities. Not to say it's wrong, but you don't understand the culture you're coming from. You don't understand how that's going to be received. And so you have huge fallout. Cash flow. For whatever reason, these guys don't understand seasonality and WIP. It's like, when I sold my company, we had several CFOs that were brought in, and I was never a finance guy. Again, no one taught me this stuff. I went to college, but I didn't pay attention in accounting class. Corporate accounting, no way. I was a kid. I had no context for that. I didn't know what I was even looking at. So I didn't really understand accounting, but I just got in and I started looking at our numbers. I'm like, I got to figure out cash flow. And it's difficult. It's a very difficult industry to figure out cash flow, especially if you're mixing residential and commercial, because they have such different payment schedules and liabilities and things like that. So, but I created a pretty basic flow that was able to track our WIP, and I could check week over week to make sure we were in good shape. And I don't like to use spreadsheets like that because I want it in the system. But that's what I did just to get by. And it was crazy to me that I saw several iterations of CFOs come through who couldn't put together something as functional. And I'm like, no, you guys are messing up the cash flow. And I've seen that on different scales, which is scary.
You've said that storm chasing can be bad for both homeowners and roofers. What's the fix?
Maybe a repair first mentality.
I love that.
Yeah, maybe because that's what we pitched, and it was legitimate, right? Is I want to come in and I want to see. Again, I look at myself as everyone should have a good accountant, attorney, contractor, right? Doctor, and I think being that good contractor for people means helping them understand things about their home and their financial situation related to their home that they don't understand. So I think I'm great at servicing clients because I can go in and I can say, well, let's look at the numbers. Let's see what makes sense for you. Does a replacement make sense right now, or does a repair? Because we can do this, and so for example, you have a customer who has an ACV policy. they've got, say, a 30 square roof that's maybe 20 something grand, and it's a $400,000 house with a 2% deductible and an ACV policy. So they're at $8,000 deductible, and then they've got another, say, $5,000 in depreciation. So, okay, it's going to cost you 13 grand right now to go back with something similar. Or, we can do a repair, because maybe you don't have like a ton of, there's all this, there's all the marginal stuff and everything. Maybe we do this, we do a repair, and then we put you in a situation where next time there's a hailstorm, you have a better policy. Maybe. There's different solutions you can do for different people, but we just go in and we say, look, here's, we do a full report. I think having a standardized report, that's another I mean, there's so much that's like, do whatever you want. Hey, sales rep, go climb on the roof, take pictures, show it to the homeowner. Okay, but then every single one of them is doing something different, and every single homeowner has a different experience with your company. I want my homeowners to have the same experience with my company, whether it's this rep or that rep, or at least very similar. Obviously, their personalities will come out, but I want them to get the same inspection report. I want them on the same contract. I want them to go through the same pitch, because these are things that we've taken a lot of time, money, and energy to intentionally engineer to service our customers. And if I just say, hey, go figure it out for yourself, I'm depleting all of the value we've just created. So for me, I think making sure that we're putting our reps and our homeowners in a position where we can have that consistent customer experience journey from lead to closeout, I think is really, really important. And offering repairs as part of that process through a proper, less subjective inspection process that's not just looking for hail damage is going to be the game changer there.
What's the hardest part of running a roofing company?
For me, people. For me, I like systems, and I love people. I get along with them, but I also sometimes, you can maybe tell the way my brain works. It's a little. Sometimes I'm too complicated. So drilling it down to the core information they need that's probably my biggest difficulty. For most people, I think the biggest thing is that they're set up with a terrible model that's designed for just hiring a bunch of mercenaries, but then you have a mercenary culture.
Got it. Last 6 questions. They kind of intended to be quicker, soundbite potential, we'll call them. You've said the industry harms homeowners. How so?
The industry? Well, I think the insurance side absolutely harms them because of the way the policies are being written and the way they're being sold into them, because they don't even understand what they're buying. They just hear cheap and they're like, yeah. And then on the roofing side, I think, probably just, again, pushing unnecessary replacements. I get it, but like, it's selfish, and it ends up that hurts homeowners to a degree, depending on the reasoning behind. If you're rushing it, because like we mentioned when we were talking before, that policies are going to get worse, inflation's going to get worse. So if you're rushing it because we think the situation's going to get worse for them, that's one thing. But if your motivation is just, I'm going to go sell everybody a replacement, whether or not they need it, I don't see that as being a helpful thing.
What's the shadiest thing you've seen in the industry that still sticks with you?
Well, the one that comes to mind, I'm not going to share because it affected me very personally, and I don't want to put you on blast.
Let's go. No name calling, just
no. Well, just I had problems with my roll up that were kind of hard for me.
So, what's the shadiest thing you've seen?
Shadiest thing I've seen. The shadiest thing I've seen is probably the insurance companies and the way that they facilitate the policies. I mean, to me, that's the core problem. I mean, do I think there are roofers out there doing shady stuff? Unquestionably. But I think from a systemic, almost like a national epidemic.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the insurance companies are out for themselves, and they are creating policies that are going to create a financial epidemic in this country. And I'm very interested to see what happens when you have huge portions of the population on ACV policies that need to get roofs replaced that they don't have the money to replace. I don't know what happens at that point, because now you have an uninsured roof, because a lot of them are going, that's the other thing, the roofers are just getting them to file claims, not knowing what the financial situation is or the policy, which is a whole other thing, because we're not allowed to interpret the policy anyway. So the whole situation is really kind of set up for failure, and I think the homeowners are the ones that are going to get hurt the most.
What do you say to just hustle roofers? There's so many guys just go do it, get, sales fix everything mentality, hustle away.
It's not me, but I'll tell you, I think there's legitimacy to it actually. And the reason I say that is I think some of the companies I've seen that have been the most successful, it's culture based, and a lot of that comes down to that hustle mentality. Now, I think that there are healthy ways to do that and unhealthy ways to do that. I think if you create a healthy structure, if you create a healthy ethos and philosophy and vision and values in the company where it's like, we're hustling and this is why. You need your why. If your why is just like, I like expensive stuff, I have very expensive taste, I want to be able to afford those things, and that's fine for me. But if I'm just like, oh yeah, you need an AP, and like, that's not what everybody needs. We talked about that earlier. This is your American dream, and it's beautiful. And I love this. I live in a high rise with with all windows and no patio. Now I don't like that. I like outdoors, but there's we all
And you
like
can
our
have
own
$1,000,000
things.
and I can have $500,000,
And it
but
can be
I
you
might
can be
have
so much happier.
yeah.
And you might have a family and I might not. And so I think this whole like selling a vision is important, but then giving them the structure to allow that vision to be fueled by their own why, and then giving them the structure to be successful inside of that. So I have no problem with hustle culture. I think it's absolutely necessary, and I think a lack of that culture can be extremely problematic with the right. One of our biggest problems, in my opinion, was we kind of struggled a little bit, I think, before we sold. My partner and I had he was a family man. I'm more of like the single city guy. I'm more of the hustle, like hard. And I'm from New York, I'm Sagittarius, like I'm pretty aggressive. Like, let's do, I don't, and he was more like family and everything like that. And I think that conflict can create some problems because you ultimately want to find this balance of caring about the people, but not caring about them so much that you allow them to become their own enablers. And I think we had a problem with that, honestly, where we made way too many exceptions for people, frankly. We had a hustle first mentality, but then when people would break from that, we didn't really hold them to the standard we should have. So I think the hustle mentality needs to come with healthy standards, incentivization, and values. But with those things, I think it's the real solution.
One red flag that every homeowner should know about roofers.
They're salespeople. They don't understand roofing most of the time. So I would actually give them a series of questions to ask other
About
roofers.
roofing.
Like, ask them if the drip edge goes on top of or under the underlayment. Just ask that one question, and you'll know if you have a sales rep or a roofer.
So what's the right question? What's the right answer?
The way I was taught is that you want it to be under on the rakes and over on the valleys because of the water flow, or on the eaves because of the water flow. So if it's wind driven rain from the side, you need it to be on top.
The simple fact that you know the answer speaks volumes. And exactly, like there's so many.
I didn't know that though when I was a sales guy.
So many coaches teach that product does not matter, knowledge does not matter. I think everything matters. I agree. Well, but see, like that's your hustle culture. Go sell the deal, figure out it later. Someone else will do it, and we outself ourselves of success. You can sell a lot, but if you cannot produce it, I have a guy called me the other day, and he said like he was consulting with me if he should go find another job. He sold a couple $1,000,000. His company is building 8 months out and pushing him today, so he's not getting paid. He's owed like 60 grand. He cannot get it because they're not installing. And his boss literally would scream and yell if he doesn't meet his quota. He's like, dude, I just sold 5 roofs this week. Why you want me to sell 10 when I'm 8 months out? He's like, do you? And meanwhile, they're not paying for me. Like he sees problems in reviews that they're not building right now. They have issues with the current production. He's like, should I look for another job? I'm like, you should be looking for another job.
Yeah. Yeah, because that's where semantics come into play. Define hustle culture. If it's like, hey, we want to hustle, we want to work hard, we want to outwork everybody, I'm all about that. If it's and that's where emotions, this is one thing that I've had to learn. I'm very logical, but I'm also very emotional. And I take things very personally. And so I used to have a problem with that. When my sales reps that I poured into wouldn't put forth the effort, I took it personally, which is a huge mistake. And so one of the things that I think is really important is you just set the standards and then let the standards speak for themselves. You don't have to get loud. If you're hitting the standards, and those, I do must, should, could goals. So like wherever we're talking about on that spectrum of a C to an A player, if you're doing your job, you're doing your job. If you're not, you're not. And I'm not going to be a dick about it. I'm not going to yell at you. I'm going to check on you. If you're a performer and you start slumping, I'm going to say, hey, what, I noticed your numbers dropped. What happened? I'm not going to come in, you suck, that's not productive, So I'm going to, what's going on? Now there's a you can err in being too coddling, which I've done in the past too, where I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, and I'm trying to be there for them. And, sometimes you have to say, hey, get off your ass and go do something. But also understand, like, hey, maybe your guy had a death in the family or going through a breakup, something like that. Help them understand because ultimately I look at it as you have two main goals. One is to ensure that the values of the company are being promoted properly, and that includes profit. And two is to make sure your people are successful. And so if someone comes through my system and they are doing a good job, great. And if they're doing a bad job, then we got to just have a conversation about that, and we give them an opportunity to step up or step out. And that doesn't have to be a yelling thing. It doesn't have to be a dick thing. You can just be kind and say, look, it's not working out.
Agreed. How should contractors handle those homeowners with the bad insurance coverages? Like the crisis is coming, right?
Yeah.
If you go to Europe, you'll see that in Europe, insurance companies do not pay for the roofs. And I was in Istanbul last year, like I'm staying in a hotel and looking around, a whole bunch of different roofs, patches, repairs, right? Like they're fine with it. Like, yeah, it's not brand new. Like, actually, I was in Rome and I see this roof. Like, it's like, how is this thing is not leaking? Everything is growing on it, and no one cares. Like in the United States, that roof would have like 20 door knockers. Right? They replace it when they replace it, right? So, how should contractors here deal with those homeowners?
Again, I think it goes back to that repair first mentality. If there's an option for that, do that, maintenance plans, and then try and help them, try and have some good insurance agents in your back pocket you can recommend to people, and talk to them about policies that you think people should be on, and then educate the homeowners on their policies. Let them know what an ACV policy is. Let them know that the deductibles are no longer $200, $500, $1,000. They're no longer 1%. They're 2%, 3%, and it's getting worse. So educate them on that stuff and then help them make good decisions.
Last question. What's the hard truth about roofing no one wants to say? Everybody knows it, but nobody wants to talk about it.
What comes to mind, and this isn't a hard truth, but I think I'll say this is going to be political because I'm not going to answer your question. I'll try and come back to it. But I think I see some things going on that are really exciting me. So I'll say it in a positive way. I think seeing some of the stuff that's happening with technology, I'm seeing more and more people have really good conversations in the roofing industry about the right way to do things. And I think we're starting to get it. And so I think that's it's not necessarily a hard truth, but here's a hard truth. PE's coming, tech is coming. If you don't figure something out to keep you competitive, you're going to get swallowed up. That's the hard part about that. The good part about it is if we do this the right way, we can make a lot of money and help a lot of people. And I think that there's a really good opportunity. I'm not a roofing guy, I'm not in roofing because I love roofing. I'm in roofing because 7 years ago I was teaching at a Bible college. Someone asked me to come in and teach, help build a canvassing team, and they told me that they wanted to track a $10 million company's lead sources on Microsoft Excel. And I was like, whoa. I'm like, you're doing $10 million. I was making 40 grand a year at the time. I'm like, you're making $10 million and you don't have, I was like, there's an opportunity here, because I see that and I'm like, money is just a way to help people and help yourself, and it creates options and opportunity. And I'm like, if a company can run at $10 million this way in this industry, there is tremendous potential. And I saw that, and that's why I kind of invested, because I think we can do a lot of good through this. And especially now that these insurance policies are coming out, I think we have to do a lot of good. I think we have kind of a moral imperative to solve this to some degree as roofers and pivot from what we've been doing.
We'll call it a wrap. Yeah. We read all our comments. Comment away if you have questions for me or Chris. Ask in the comments below, and I'll see you guys in the next video.
Thank you, brother. Thank you, sir. You're a wonderful host, man. Appreciate you.